When you look at,
And still going.
Yeah. When you look at the support of businesses, especially manufacturing, we have seen that due to the economic times that the country has been through, quite a number of big companies have been, one, downsizing, two, reinventing their business models. In the wake of post-COVID, the current economic times, the depreciation of the Kenya shilling and how we saw it behave against the dollar, do you think it inspires confidence in the Kenyan population to still venture into MSMEs?
Yeah, so it's very true. We faced very challenging times, and not just Kenya alone. This has been global challenge. It's been all over the world, especially when COVID hit. In fact, it hit other parts of this world heavier than it even hit us. But since then, every government has been, and every economy has been on recovery path. And as we've been recovering, there have been other initiatives, for example, to support our MSMEs. We've had initiatives to support recovery, for example, through credit guarantee scheme. I know for sure in Kenya, we've had initiative supported through EU and supporting our financial institution to advance some credit to our MSMEs, especially the medium enterprises level to recover from the shocks. I know for us as a government, we have a very robust credit guarantee scheme of about, right now it's grown up to about 6 billion. That also was launched around the same time of COVID as a recovery measure. But above everything all, we have also as a government, because you see when it comes to a business, you first of all need to be so sure about sustainable or rather access to sustainable market. So then what have we been doing in that space? Yes. We've had engagement, of course, with the global market. We early this year, we were able to conclude an economic partnership between us and European Union, expanding the market for MSMEs, especially those who are doing manufacturing and especially for export. And to me, I think that in itself is a part of the recovery measure, because part of the recovery measure also, we have to create more linkages to for our MSME to access the market. And on the financing bit, I know the challenges have been there, but what are we doing also in the space of MSME? We've been able to introduce, especially when we came in as a government, a financial inclusion intervention through the Hustler Fund. And, many people look at the Hustler Fund and the logic behind Hustler Fund, probably which some people do not understand, is that this is also part of recovery. Because if we are rehabilitating majority of Kenyans, we found almost 8 million Kenya who had gone, who had sunk into CRBs. And you see, once you sunk into CRBs means that you've been blocked, from participating effectively in the economy. So what did we need to do as a government? And we had to find a way of helping these Kenyans, who most of them actually were running their own small businesses, recover from those shocks, repair their credit. So that's how then we came up with this fund, the Hustler Fund, and we agreed. We had a conversation with the private sector, the financial institution, and all other players in the economy, that there is a way through which we can all come together and partner and give a second life to majority of these Kenyans. And we're talking about Kenyans who are aged 18 years and above, who are in their productive, age, productive timelines. And you see, if you lock them out of the economy, the threat in the market, or rather the failure in the market, will be like, even for the financial market, financial institution, the customer base was also bound to decrease. So if we encourage that to happen like each and every year without any strategy to supporting them to come out of, to come out of that hole, what will happen then is that even the private sector will wake up one day and they find they have no customer to work with. So it was to benefit all of us in the market. So for us to correct that market failure, So we introduced the Hustler Fund to deepen financial inclusion. I know we started off with the lower limits. The max was about 3,000. So far, it has actually increased. And today, as we speak, following, the increase during a first anniversary, we have Kenyans actually who can even borrow up to 50,000, who have been growing their limit, depending on how, the practice of just borrowing, and have shown they have very good credit borrowing behavior. And so why were we doing this? It's because the moment you meet some shocks, even if you had some sort of collateral, and you go down, coming up becomes a challenge, because probably you do not have security. And how do you de-risk them? We de-risk them by trying also now to introduce a new form of collateral. And in this sense, we can actually build your collateral or your credit access by just building good behaviors, because each one of us can take care of their behavior and can grow good mannerism around credit. But then we also sat down with the private sector, especially the financial institution, and we say, look, majority of our population, they're unbanked, they're unserved, they don't own property, some of them, actually majority of them are not employed. Because look at, this country has a potential workforce of 20 million.
Yes.
Out of 20 million, only 3.5 million are employed formally, like formally employed, either in private sector or in civil service. And out of 3.5 million, the civil service can only take, actually it accounts for less than 1 million. To be precise, around 970,000. So leaving 2.5 million or thereabout in the private sector. But then those ones who are not formally employed are about 17 million. So what does it mean? It means that those people have to hustle, have to engage informally and create opportunities for themselves and see how they can be able to earn an income. So the work of the government is to see, how do we create a conducive environment? How do we stimulate economic engagement of these 17 million people? How do we formalize them? Because most of them we do not even know. If you are informal, nobody even know where you are. So when we come up with intervention, we are not able to come up with specific and targeted intervention that will really help you and fast track your way up. So what we needed to do is come up with measures that will create visibility of this 17 million. And today, as we speak, just through the Financial Inclusion Fund, we've been able to create a visibility of close to 22.9 million Kenyans. We've reached out to 22.9 million Kenyans. We have a data, people who have been onboarded on the Hustler Fund. Out of them, around 20 million have actually borrowed the Hustler Fund. And we've been able to disburse through just the phone, you yourself dialing the phone and requesting, depending on your credit limit, about 51.9 billion. Out of that, because we also introduced
59 billion.
51.9 billion that has so far been disbursed. That's our loan portfolio. And then out of that, there is usually a mandatory saving of 5%, of which 70% goes to the long-term savings, because you also want to encourage the culture of pension, the culture of saving for the future, so that if you retire, whether in the informal sector, whether in MSME, whether you're employed, you retire into a decent future, you have a decent end. Because you've had situation where, even if you're doing a business, even if you're a mama mboga, time will come when you cannot go to that kibanda. So what happens to you? We need to start now securing our future. So we introduced that platform. So 30% of your borrowing, every time you borrow, goes to your short term, which you can really, access after 1 year, and you can be able to invest in any desirable project that you want. So by doing that, we've been able to mobilize close to 3 billion in saving, where these around 20 million Kenyans who have actually borrowed the Hustler Fund now have got a savings, of course, of about 3 billion. And these one now, and let me also, just on that, you see, like the top Hustler Fund borrower, during our first anniversary, had saved close to 225,000 100,000, shillings. And this is a person who never even had a single saving. So with that kind of saving, if now he moves back and he goes to the bank now to ask for any loan, let's say 200,000 or wherever, I'm sure the commercial bank will give this person, one, on the basis of now having demonstrated good credit rating and also having some sort of saving. So we are helping the hustlers not just to access this money, but also to start now saving as a way of securing, as also as a way of mobilizing and populating their future collateral. And out of that, we have close to 8 million Kenyans who borrow regularly, who have borrowed more times, more than even 10 times. You realize even during the anniversary there was debate around how did this, the best borrower borrow close to over 800 times. And it is possible because depends with the kind of business which you're doing. You can borrow as many times that you need a day, so long as you're borrowing and repaying. But again, also, there are people who are being incentivized because of that opportunity of saving. Because you see, it's not easy to find a product, or rather to find a platform where you can save as little as 50 shillings, as little as 100, or even 10 bob. But here now you have a platform. It's so easy. You don't have to walk to the bank to save. You just borrow, you save. So that some Kenyans were just borrowing multiple times because they wanted to start saving for their future.
Yes, what's the cost of starting an MSME in this country?
Well, it depends, because again it also depends with the definition of your MSME. And let me just give you some statistics so that you know. Is that, like I said earlier on, that 98% of our businesses are MSME. But then out of that 98%, you find that almost 88% are micro. We're talking about the micro, those ones that are highly informal. Probably they have only employed that particular person, the sole entrepreneur, the proprietor, the person who is running the business probably, or maybe they're in some sort of lottery. Today I get some money, I do business. Tomorrow I'm not doing, it's some sort of lottery engagement. Today, if you give me money, I'll go and maybe buy a few things from Kikomba, go sell. Tomorrow, I'm out of business, some sort of. So they are just trying to do something in the hope that they can raise some income to put food on the table. So those majority of them are micro. They are actually not running businesses that are sustainable, businesses which are informed by a market. So most of them are still in that space. However, according to the statistics which we have as per 2016, now I'm working on those statistics to update them, and hopefully by the end of this, by the end of this financial year, and I think we're already working on a survey on MSME. Towards end of June, I think we'll have new and updated statistics about our MSME in this country, which is very, very instrumental even to informing our programs. So you find that so the small, so we have MSME which are micro, which may not even be registered. People, you wake up today, you start running battle with the authority because you think I just need to get my goods, put it there. You're not licensed, you're not what. Then as you move towards small, there probably you have acquired a license, an operating license. You're somehow registered, you have a registered name, which are also very, very few. And then from there, and you remember that number even increased when we had measures that in the last regime, which actually eased the entry to business. You remember when they put together one-stop shop for business registration, the Huduma services, that helped and supported many people actually to walk into Huduma Center, register business names and stuff. So somehow, some people, they could be having a business name, they're there, they have registered, which is to business name about 600 bob, you get a business, to register a business name. But again, as you move towards now, the medium, and even at the apex of the higher end of the small, you have also companies, and companies to register. You need something probably from between around 20,000 to get everything. If you do not know how to do the documentation, you need to seek services. So the entry cost around there to set up a business, I would say, especially if I to look at the company, probably you need about 50,000 shillings. But for a business name, which is the easiest, you have 600, you can be able to register and you are there in business. But for me, the cost is not even about registration. The cost is about coming up with viable business ideas which you can easily access the market, and again, because if you can access the market, then even you'll be trusted in the financing space. You'll also be able to access credit.
A huge task, especially for the population, Kenyans, have been to move from just being business owners to entrepreneurs. And I'm sure that's, a key goal, especially for this government. Do you think that as things are moving right now, we are progressing, and is there hope to become actually a manufacturing country? Because these are the strategies that have been used by countries that, we benchmark with. Do you think that as it is right now, there is hope that perhaps, say by the end of the first term of this government, we'll have moved from X percentage of manufacturing to a bigger percentage that will then enable Kenyans to say, okay, fine, the hustler fund that I took has enabled me to do manufacturing?
I think it's very possible, and I'll give you a journey why that is very possible. First and foremost, we correct, first of all, the market failure in access to credit. And by doing that is to bringing everybody on the table and letting them just appreciate why we are doing this, why it's important for us to, all of us, to commit to financial inclusion. And commitment to financial inclusion is by making sure that you come up with the financing products which are easily accessible, and we also now going the digital way, because through digitalization, then you get to cut down on the cost of some cost of operation, cost of administration of that particular credit, because that then what makes our credit to become very expensive. So if we can bring down the barrier and enable our MSMEs who have very good ideas, to access financing, that's one pathway of hitting manufacturing. I know currently our percentage is very low. Our manufacturing sector, we almost between 7 to 8%. But our aspiration to see to how can we move this to about 20% or more, probably by 2030. So if that is our aspiration, where do we begin from? We first of all begin by appreciating the architecture and the outlook of our economy. We are micro, so first of all, we must come up with a micro, based manufacturing strategy. And how do we achieve this? You saw we launched the county aggregation and industrial park, across the country. And I know so far we've done groundbreaking of about 12 of them, and we're still moving on. I'm sure this year we are going to do more groundbreaking. And the reason we are doing this is that our manufacturing strategy, which is now based around certain priority value chain. For example, we flagged out 9 priority value chains. We are looking at dairy, we're looking at livestock, leather value chain. These have got very high growth potential and which can boost our manufacturing. We're looking at edible oil. Remember, edible oil is our second import bill in this country after petroleum. And yet, the raw materials for edible oil, those are traditional food value chain. The sesame, the sunflowers, the palm oil, all these things. Our people have got that practice to do it. It's just a question, how do we arrange our small scale farmers to now start venturing into that? How do we make sure that the cost of input comes down and becomes affordable, like the fertilizer? How do we make sure that there is availability of quality seeds to support them and to enhance the production. Because once you have the production level of raw materials, then what happens is that you can now drive the value addition, and value addition is manufacturing. And you can be able now to attract investors, including those foreign investors, to come now and invest. So the whole idea of setting up this county aggregation and industrial park is to, first of all, provide a market for our farmers, and so and also stimulate local investment in those counties, so that now people start moving towards value addition. And like I say, for us to make value, to add value to our farming, we have to go the direction of manufacturing, adding value, because that's what will give us that competitiveness that can create jobs. So we are on the right track in terms of our thinking, in terms of having identified those priority value chain. And again, we are looking also at coffee, tea, our traditional cash crop, and see how do we add value, how do we go the value addition way. So we have a commitment to that, but also by setting up those infrastructure and in our industrialization strategy is to show our population that there is no corner of this country which cannot manufacture, because each and every corner of this country, they have some value proposition in terms of certain value chains, be it agricultural. You've seen right now we are working, we are heavily promoting the building and construction, the affordable housing. Why are we doing this? This is also to stimulate now the manufacturing of the local raw materials to support that sector. And we are doing this across the country.
Yes, I'm sure you've seen the concerns, especially regarding the farmers, milk farmers, avocado farmers as well, regarding the taxes that came about with the Finance Act of 2023. Looking at, the positive outlook that you're giving, don't you think that perhaps in a way also that these incentives or these initiatives that the government has come with could be, in hindsight, be reducing the confidence of someone saying, I can venture, because we are looking at the small, if I have, say, a quarter of an acre of avocado trees, I'll be able to, venture into it and see how it will go about. Don't you think that perhaps, in a way, the same government just continues to demoralize, if you could call it?
I don't think that's the case. Number one, you've seen, let me give you an example of the petrol, the prices of petrol. When we came in, where were we? And it wasn't because of our own internal factors. It was global factors, the high inflation and everything. We've been able to work that out. And just last week, you saw now even coming down to 10 shillings. And I think now the prices are going to come down. You saw when we came, where did you find the dollar? So when you see things happening, especially impacting on our taxes, sometimes they're not just internal factors, but we are trying as a government, and I want to assure you, given that we are managing the high inflation, the shilling is gaining strength against the dollar. I think this is going also to be cascaded even to our tax regime. And again, our taxation in this country are not static. This is a government that we are engaging. We are engaging because we know our MSMEs and the Kenyan people are our partners in our economic development agenda. We feel the heat, but we say we can take this pain for some time as we work out a conducive environment. I am also sure that you saw the other day a Treasury promising that they're really looking into our tax regime. They're taking a look around it and see. But the most important thing that needs to happen is building the visibility. Now, before you know who are even these farmers, and I think we've been working on registering the farmers, digital registration.
Which has caused chaos, because
it might have caused chaos. I mean, people will feel this is really causing chaos and doing this. But it's also giving us an appreciation of who are these farmers, what are their needs, what are their pain points, what are their challenges, and make us also to address it.
Wouldn't that be mapping them up to... So perhaps, go ahead and tax them, because that has been the
but
concern.
You see, taxation is our civic responsibility, if I might say, because we need a better environment, a better business environment. We must also pay for it. And where does the government generate revenue? It generates revenue from the taxes. So, but what we are doing is, as we now embark on, working out the environment, we need to know who are they. Remember, just the other day when His Excellency the President announced subsidies around fertilizers, it was going to be very difficult had we not registered those farmers and actually make sure that we break off the middlemen, and probably, let me be sensitive and say middle women, who are making the cost of fertilizer also go up. Because now it becomes so easy, a voucher system, you get a message, because you have registered yourself, given your details, you know where you are, you've indicated the number of acreages that you have, and you can now tell the quantities that you need. So that to avoid a situation where middlemen will go and buy those subsidized fertilizers, go and hoard, and now start reaching out to those farmers probably who do not have information. I think this digitalization and registering our farmers, and especially around specific value chain, is going to help us to understand them more. If we know we are dealing with 2 million farmers, for example, of coffee, or if there are even 2 million of avocado who are there, we know which part of this country is there, we know the context, we know even the climate condition in that particular part of the country, we know which kind of support probably they need. It will help us now to come up with intervention and incentives, tax incentives, that now will ease their burden, because now it will be specific to their situation. And I just want to assure Kenyans that, you see, there is no government that is always deliberate at punishing its people. The government is there for the people, and especially for the sector, for the business sector. The government's role is to facilitate the growth of the business sector. I just gave you numbers around our job situation in this country, and I told you the only room we have to create jobs is in the private sector. So actually, it is in our best interest that we can stimulate growth in the private sector to enable them create more jobs to our economy. And like I said, visibility is very important, because then it helps us to come up with targeted and specific intervention to those to our farmers and to MSME. And
okay, so looking at the turnover tax that was increased from 1% to 3% for applicable to MSMEs if their business turnover is between 1 million to 25 million, what exactly informed that?
Yeah, we of course any increase, any policy that we come about with is informed by data, is informed by evidence, and of course they look at the environment, the performance of the macroeconomic environment. They also look at the micro environment. They also assess opportunities that we have, and they know that we are able to. I know it could be a little bit paining, a little bit, but they know we can actually sustain that as we improve our environment. And let me tell you, once we get to improve our environment, we get to create more jobs, we widen the tax base, we get to generate more revenue, we get to increase the foreign exchange, and our shilling start getting much more stronger and stronger than the dollar. Obviously, we sit back and we'll be able to rationalize and we'll be able to reduce.
Okay. Yeah. So when you look at some of the wage bill, especially, I mean, when you look at the conversation on wage bill and exporting labor, do you think that perhaps the Kenyan youth, who constitute a huge percentage of our population, are quite interested in taking up entrepreneurship as a venture and means of survival? Because on the other side, while Hustler Fund will be able to start you off, say, at 3,000, by the time you're increasing, it will also take time. It will also mean that your business idea needs to be viable enough, so that you also, as you were talking about manufacturing earlier on, so that you don't just be a business person, you become an entrepreneur. Do you think that perhaps the timeline and the circumstances as they are right now, especially for young people with the high unemployment rates, they are interested in pursuing entrepreneurship and taking up MSMEs?
Entrepreneurship actually is a self-employment opportunity, and like I said, the biggest problem we have in this economy in Kenya and across the continent is unemployment. And I also dare say that the average age of an African person, African citizen in the continent is around 17 years. Where is a 17 years? Still in school. Okay? So we have a problem on how do we make use of the youth bulge. So there's so many things that needs to be done. One, from even our training. Now that, you see, like the outlook which I've shared, we only have a room for currently of about 3.5 million Kenyans. Where do we take 17 million Kenyans? So we need to work also on our training and capacity building framework so that we start channeling out skills that can quickly be enterprise. So when you are graduating, we start now also making you understand that you need to be mainstream in the job creation environment. That actually, as you walk out of college, as you walk out of the university with a degree certificate, addition to that, we need to empower you with tools of now going outside there and creating your own job. So what you're doing in my sector, other than Hustler Fund, and by the way, it's not only Hustler Fund, which is there in this sector.
But also
there is so much
in commercial banks have...
No, before you even go to the commercial bank, within my own State Department, for example, we have agencies. And within the ecosystem of MSME, look, we have the Youth Enterprise Fund. Today, young people can be able to borrow even for LPO. If they get tender, they can borrow even up to 5 million for LPO. We have Kenya Industrial Estate, which is supporting young people interested in the manufacturing sector. Those MSME who are doing...
What's the rate of young people getting these tenders, especially from government? Are they at because to avoid also this thing of kazi kwa vijana pesa kwa wazee, are they? What's the rate of young people? I mean, in the normal age group, getting tenders, good tenders, you're talking about, say, from 5 million and above.
There is opportunity for that. Remember, for close to now, more than actually almost, I'll put it almost 2 decades now, when the government started this preferential procurement, treatment towards certain disadvantaged group. Remember, during President Kibaki's time, it was about 10% of access to government procurement opportunity to young people. Then when the Uhuru Ruto came in 10 years ago, now probably 11 years ago, they scaled it up to about 30% for youth, women, and persons with disability. Yes, we have if you look at the compliance report across all our MDAs, because you are now talking about government, you'll find that indeed young people have been accessing. But also because of lack of visibility, which I was talking about earlier, because what do we use to what is the indicator? The indicator, of course, is the AGPO certificate. And you see, I can have the AGPO certificate, the female, the women, and the youth.
The youth, yes.
But you see, at the end of the day, if you've been given a tender, what will be recorded there will be like, okay, this number of company, they're owned by youth on paper. We may not know if they were really youth who eventually benefited or if they are women. But now that's what we are correcting. Because part of my mandate is to enforce AGPO and to ensure that indeed we follow up, and it's young people, the young people, it is women, it is persons of disability who are the end beneficiaries.
So if you can hold on that thought, we listen to a caller, some feedback coming in through our call-in line. Habib calling in from Nairobi. Good evening, Habib. How are you? Do you have a question to the PS?
I'm quite well, thank you.
I beg your pardon?
I'm saying I'm quite well, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, my question is, the lady has done very well in various issues about borrowing for young people to borrow and for hustle fund.
Yes.
But there is a problem with these young men and women who have been trying to trade, and they have already registered with GOtv. Young people from 20 years to 30 years. But then there is a lot of pending bills for them. I'm saying this because I've given many of them some money to go and do some business, but they are unable even to pay. They have closed their businesses because of pending bills. I'm asking, how do she help these young men and women to be paid their pending bills, either from the government and from the counties? That is a bottleneck for them, and many of them are not trading now as we speak.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Habib, for your question. I'm sure PS will be able to answer that.
Yeah, so just like we were discussing, and you were telling me whether young people are willing to do this, I agree with Habib, is that the question of pending bill has been a challenge, a big challenge, but we'll also appreciate what the government is doing right now. As you are all aware, there is a task force headed by the former Auditor General, Edward Ouko, which is looking into that, trying to require those pending bill and to ensure that they get sorted out as soon as possible. But also going forward, we're also making a case for AGPO. Part of enforcing of AGPO is for us to ensure that we come out with an agreed credit period. You know, let's say if it is 60 days, or 90 days mark, because you see, if we are going to advance credit to these young people, assuming they're going to borrow the Hustler Fund or the Youth Fund or the Kenya Industrial Estate Loan to put into the tender, and they have a grace period of about 60 days before they start repayment of that credit facility, but then they have done their supplies, and what you're doing is that you're not paying them on time, you're actually sinking them deeper into poverty, and sometimes you're sinking them into the grave, because we've had stories of entrepreneurs, especially young people, some of them who have resorted to suicide, because you see, they cannot stand the shame that comes with, you know, being followed up and down because of, you know, having some unrepaid loans here and there. But so those is part of enforcement. So we are working out, and I can assure you is that from where I sit as an accounting officer, we've been reminded, and you're being reminded. Like, for example, in this financial year, the government has made it clear and keeps on communicating and reminding from time to time with circular. First of all, we must make sure there is zero fault audit. And part of that is that we do not have some resolve also pending bills. So we are really working on that.
I'm sure.
And let me tell you, how do you do that? You do that by ensuring that you can only procure, first of all, when you have the budget, if you budgeted for. It should not come as something that you just thought of, you'll procure and then you budget. You can only procure when there is a budget. So there is that, the budgetary discipline that has been instilled in us. And I think from last financial year when we came in, this financial year and the coming years, I want to assure Kenyans that this question of pending bills is going to be an issue of us. We are really working on it.
We are looking at, you know,
Yes, there are a lot of reforms around that space. Now I'm saying in the coming years, we are going to resolve this. And we are all waiting for the report from the task force that is working on it, so that also to look at what are these pending bills. There are some which are not genuine, and of course we know. Because there are some which are genuine, so we try to isolate them.
The other thing would be, I mean, young people do not go borrowing, I think, up to 20 million. Is there a way of expediting and saying, okay, these small amounts, there's, you know, that Habib was talking about, these young people who are trading, I'm sure it's not maxes of 10 million or thereabouts, to be able to expedite so that they are able to, you know, repay and still borrow, so that then the credit score is also not that.
Part of the reason why Hustler Fund is there is actually to give these young people an opportunity to access higher. Listen, you know, let me tell you, if you can be trusted with 500 shillings, you can also be trusted with 10 million. Because it means you are borrowing for a reason. And then Hustler Fund gives you now that credit rating. From there, you get graduated to other financing opportunities. Like now within even the government space, I've said we have Youth Enterprise Fund, which now it is doing LPO financing among the young people. So now if you have emerged from the Hustler Fund, this personal loan, you're borrowing 500 shillings, blah, blah, and you're repaying well. We just that credit scoring. If we can trust it, you can actually now go to Youth Enterprise Fund on the basis of that and borrow for LPO financing.
Brilliant.
Then, of course, we're also working on market guarantee. We want to make sure, and market guarantee also comes with how prompt do you pay, you know. So the county governments, the MDS, we're all having this conversation because even for the county governments, these young people do not just belong to the national government. They belong to even to the county governments. They are Kenyans. And even in the private sector, the pending bills are not just in government. They are also rife in the private sector. So we're also having that conversation to ensure that the only way that we can encourage young people to take up entrepreneurship opportunity is when they are guaranteed with a market. And for them to be guaranteed with a market, the prompt payment is a factor. And then also secondly is just a question of also information sharing. How do we share information about opportunities which are there? So we are really enforcing that. So for us in our sector, in our State Department, for us, we've come up with indicators. It is not about how many, you know, like how many, youth-owned AGPO, you know, certificate did you consider? We actually want to see those young people. We're also doing M&D to look at how many of these, how did that help you? If you borrowed, you know, for LPO financing, where are you today? Where is your business today? Are you growing? And also let me just also correct you that we have many young people in the manufacturing sector, by the way. I know a number of young people this year alone that they have come to me. We have had a conversation. They have very brilliant ideas. Some are doing value addition, and we've been able to link them up to Kenya Industrial Estate. Some of them are now accessing 5 million. They're accessing 10 million, you know, against their business ideas. And you know, there is huge opportunity. But of course, I talked about 70%. I know we can do more.
Yes, let's. We've entered the home stretch of the conversation, and I want us to go to feedback. I'm seeing through our SMS line. You don't say your number, but you give your name, but you say, I don't get my Hustler Fund. Why? I need it. Someone is asking that.
What do you mean you don't get? Has he repaid?
Perhaps you'll answer that for us. Someone says, I have a creativity of creating content of an episode, but I can't raise it. I would like to have support. I think this is in terms of content creation. In content,
if at all we are financing that, if the gentleman, I don't know if he's a gentleman or a lady, if they walk into Youth Enterprise Fund, there is an opportunity for that if they are youth. If the women, if they walk into Women Enterprise Fund, there are products that they can be supported. And because it's content, I think the youth and Uwezo Fund is also there within that space. They can, if they come together, cluster together as a team, they can be able to be facilitated up to, let's say, half a million. Like I say, KIE can support them up to 20 million. But we want also to expand that, to push KIE to the now space of crowding MSMEs into the manufacturing by giving them higher loans. Then also in the manufacturing, we have an opportunity. We have this government credit guarantee scheme, which we are now working out, especially to support MSMEs who are doing expo, who require high, you know, high loan limits. And so we can guarantee them. We can guarantee their business. And also as a part of also de-risking also the financing sector. So there is opportunity. What I will say is that with the coming of the State Department, it's now very easy to place your hands and your eyes on those opportunities, because before it was basically just private sector or people working in silos. Now you can really, if you come to our office, we can be able to guide you even to opportunities in the private sector.
Brilliant. If we could just, we have just about max of a minute, but there is a report you talked about, tracking MSME scorecard. Is that report available to informers working with women-led smallholder cotton farmers? Yes or no? There's a report you mentioned about earlier that is available.
The credit score?
The credit score. Is it available for women-led smallholder cotton farmers to access it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have women who have been digitalized.
All right.
Our presidential economic team working together with the MDS in government, we've digitalized farmers. We have specific farmers who are doing cotton, we have farmers who are doing sunflower. So we've been able to register farmers as per those sectors across the country. So those value chain. So it's easier. It depends from where he come from. If it's in Rift Valley, western part of this country, we can be able to avail the data, and it becomes easier for them now to engage in support.
Okay, the last one. The problem of supporting the development of SMEs is not finance or access to credit, as some seem to think. The key is skills acquisition.
Yes.
Finance is the last thing we need to think about after the market. Interest or attitude and skills and attitude that self-employment is a viable option. Many believe they can set up businesses, but that is not for them. It is for those without education as a stopgap measure as they await an opening in salaried job. Even parents prefer the youth to seek salaried employment. This person is also asking, can the PS leave contacts to be able to...
Yeah, of course you can share my contact because I'm here for them and to create necessary linkages, and I agree with him.
Yes.
It's about an attitude. We have to change our attitude about it, and we just have to accept reality that if there are going to be jobs, it is us Kenyans to create those jobs.
So,
and there are massive opportunities on also training. Let me just also share with this person, probably could be running some initiative that we have acquired close to 3 billion through our, support facility from the German government, which is aimed at training young people in terms of upgrading their skill and also upskilling them to be able to do viable business, but also to be able to do some jobs. And you can also, we need to look at the service in trade. You can also actual enterprise services. For example, the affordable housing. You can pull together, cluster together a group of young people from TVETs who are plumbers. They come together and they get subcontracted. That's also entrepreneurship.
Brilliant. PS, if you 20 seconds to give Kenyans your parting shot, especially on the future.
I would say the future is very bright.
Okay.
The government is committed to creating an enabling environment to growing and scaling up our MSMEs, because obviously as it sits right now, if we have to create jobs, we have to focus more resources, more attention, and we have to get everybody to support MSME to start, seeing or experiencing some growth. And I will say here that one of the challenges which you've had is that we have a heavy bottom. We have a heavy micro in MSME. The first aim is large and it's heavy. So we are now focusing on the micros to see how we start now scaling them up to small, to medium, and eventually to large enterprises at the point where we will now be growing our manufacturing sector, creating more secure and sustainable job. Okay. So we are on course.
Habib is saying, just allow me that, Bana Director, he says, why then not translate pending bills into receivables, which can then enable the young men and women borrow with receivables money owed by counties and government?
That is also one of the considerations. Like I said, the task force is working on a number of initiatives, options, and one of them, of course, that's one of the options. But again, we will be open. I think once they come up with their report, and we will subject this also to public participation. And I think Habib is still welcome to my office, so because that's really a very brilliant suggestion. We want to do that. But there is opportunities for the young people, and Kenya is very young, and therefore if it has to happen in business, it has to be about the young people, both men and women. Yeah.
Brilliant. Madam Susan Mang'eni, Principal Secretary in the State Department for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, MSME Development. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you, George. And make sure you also do a side hustle.
Of course, I will.
Start by Hustler Fund.
Of course, I will. And of course, I'll be coming to you for financing of the options that we've talked about in government.
Absolutely.
And it's great to see you back on your feet, especially after that accident. You're doing better now?
I'm glad.
Brilliant.
And I'm grateful to God. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for making time for us. And we look forward to having this conversation, especially after the outcome of the pending bills report and, the other issues that you're talking about and accessibility to funds.
Thank you. And we will come here anytime you call upon us.
Asante.
Now to work out our strategy for job creation.
Job creation.
I really wish to discuss that with you so that we start creating these jobs with you.
Brilliant. We shall be able to do that. And thank you so much, Madam PS Susan Mang'eni, for your time. My name is George Maringa. Thanking you so much for your time and feedback. I was, of course, on the show. Next week, Hibak Said will be back to take and to steer the course on the marketplace. It has been a pleasure holding the fort. As always, stay safe and be kind to one another. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.